हे दामोदर कृष्ण मुरारी हे नंद लाला हे मुरलीधर हे दामोदर कृष्ण मुरारी हे नंद लाला भूल गए क्या विनती सुनकर भूल गए क्या विनती सुनकर जीवन सागर हे करुणागर हे मुरलीधर हे दामोदर कृष्ण मुरारी हे नंद लाला अंधियारी में घिरी हुई हो हे नंद लाला ज्योति कुंज बनकर राह दिखाओ हे नंद लाला अंधियारी में घिरी हुई हो हे नंद लाला ज्योति कुंज बनकर राह दिखाओ हे नंद लाला कैसे पार करोगे तुम बिन कैसे पार करोगे तुम बिन जीवन सागर हे करुणागर हे मुरलीधर हे दामोदर कृष्ण मुरारी हे नंद लाला भूल गए क्या विनती सुनकर भूल गए क्या विनती सुनकर जीवन सागर हे करुणागर हे मुरलीधर हे दामोदर कृष्ण मुरारी हे नंद लाला हे मुरलीधर हे दामोदर कृष्ण मुरारी हे नंद लाला. Thank you.
Not hide our talents. You know, Lord Krishna is associated with Bansuri, which is associated with the open spaces, with a pastoral way of life, and there is something immensely, movingly beautiful about it. You're all cooped up. We're all estranged from nature, leading a very artificial way of life, a way of life in which we actually do not know freedom. We are living a pretense of freedom. Krishna Leela is a statement to the contrary. It's actually a celebration of human spontaneity. And it's something very beautiful. Right? Right? Yeah. Think about these things. Do not become automatons. Do not freeze into inanimate objects when you are still in the prime of your youth. Okay? I know that the Sanskrit department is devoted to music. They try to promote music, and that's a very good thing. Of all art forms, I'm particularly fascinated by music because I believe that music goes the deepest into a human being, and therefore evokes the deepest response. All right. Now let's come back to the thread of thought that was severed before time last week, because we have that dreadful instrument called the bell, and nowadays the bell rings with a vengeance, leaving no one in any uncertainty about when to begin and when to stop. So I was trying to think with you on this question of seeking excellence, right? Do you remember? Or is it that the weekends you wash your brains using Nirma washing powder? Lightning strikes Delhi, Nirma. Do you have the habit of revising what you learned in the course of the week over the weekend? From the perspective of an organized, well-directed, purposive student, the weekend is the opportunity. It's an absolute academic delight. That's when you have the leisure to go over all that you have learned in the course of the previous days and to allow them to settle down properly. I hope you switch over to this model of viewing weekends. A weekend is not a mental holiday. Make it a dental holiday, not a mental one, right? Now, the pursuit of excellence. Last Thursday it was when I said that we can perhaps understand it using a very pedestrian analogy of driving a vehicle on a road, Delhi or anywhere, wherever you are. And I said that this is a tripartite, a three-parts experience at least. The first is the vehicle and you. There's a relationship. The second is the world around of moving other vehicles, both at the front and at the rear. And third, of course, is the destination. It's the simplest illustration I can possibly bring to your notice. And we saw last week that being a driver means being in a well-defined relationship with the immediate context, the intimate context. When you learn driving in the early stages, you feel out of sorts with yourself because your relationship with the vehicle you're trying to move forward is not settled. And you feel that this vehicle is not under my control at all. That this seemingly inanimate object has a life of its own, a will of its own, and it goes wherever it wants. But gradually, you grow into a very intimate relationship with this inanimate object, as a result of which you reach a stage, perhaps after driving about 10,000 kilometers, when you're not even aware of manipulating the controls. It's as though the vehicle moves smoothly by itself. Your burden of controlling the vehicle consciously, working out all the positional advantages or disadvantages, everything is gone. And that's what is meant by saying being in sync with the essence of an institution. It's a reasonably good illustration of being in a particular relationship with the institution to which you belong. Each one of you actually is a driver. Each faculty member is a driver. Driver of St. Stephen's College. You are in a well-defined relationship with the institution. You have to understand the institution. You have to understand the vehicle that you drive. If you mistake the accelerator for the brake, which is what is called free thinking nowadays, okay? The result is an accident, right? When you want to stop the vehicle, what do? You stand on the accelerator, okay? These things happen. But you think it's all very natural because you've not been trained to think analogically. controls are absolutely essential for two things. One, to move forward and reach anywhere at all. Two, to be safe. Safety both for yourself and for others. If controls are resented, two things happen. You jeopardize the attainment of your goal, the goal with which you came here, and you also drag others into mischief, into some sort of peril. These things do happen. I'm not talking about myths and stories. Unfortunately, we do not have an intellectual framework within which to understand the poverty and the irresponsibility that are culturally packaged as the done thing. There is this dogmatic assumption that young people do this kind of thing, as though it's an obligation to be a bad driver. And so it's an obligation not to know the vehicle that you are driving. You understand the problem now? So if you are anywhere near the art of pursuing excellence, you will certainly try and place yourself in a harmonious, functionally harmonious relationship with the college in all its diverse parts. Now, while on the subject, let me also say this to you. Seeking perfection is most obviously and indubitably a dynamic state. A sleeping institution cannot be an institution that seeks excellence. There is a wonderful difference between a kinetic or dynamic phenomenon and a static phenomenon. Now let me illustrate. Again, using the vehicle. Now suppose a car is parked. You can remove its tires. You can remove its spark plug, its steering, carburetor, whatever you want you can remove. But if that car is in motion, you cannot remove any part. Every part, for the duration that the vehicle is in motion, every part functionally becomes part of that integral part of the whole. In fact, there aren't many parts. There is only one moving object. And that's what is called institutional cohesion. Today, one of the major problems that St. Stephen's College faces is its fragmentation. That fragmentation happens at various levels, the most obvious being the plethora of societies and clubs. Those who animate one society believe that they belong only to that society and they have no responsibilities that go beyond the reach of that society. If economic society, only economic students, history society, only history students, English literary society, only English literature students. It's a great shame, isn't it, if honors students were to attend a program organized by a BA program society. Now, when the college organizes a program, attendance is very poor. Why? Because you have internalized this completely static idea that this beautiful, wonderful vehicle called St. Stephen's College is now a parked vehicle and it can be divided into many parts. I will hold on to one of the wheels, you take another wheel, third person will take one of the plugs, another person will take a plug, a fourth will run away with the steering, so on and so forth. Our idea of St. Stephen's College today is in peril. And it has been in peril for a long time. And the many controversies manufactured by some vested interests all stem from this epidemic, this terrible mistake. St. Stephen's College is not a parked car to be looked at, admired. It is a moving vehicle. It is in a state of academic dynamism. And that's what all of us are part of. Therefore, if you really are and you believe you are in a state of pursuing excellence, which is the bottom line responsibility of being in college, you have to be in that state of dynamic, intimate oneness with the essence of the institution. I hope this is clear. This is one part of pursuing excellence. Any form of alienation between you and the institution will go against you. It will cripple you, paralyze you. And there are some ambassadors of alienation who are extremely adept at manufacturing artificial grievances merely to sell their agenda. They are not interested in you. None of these advocacies is, by any stretch of imagination, even remotely academic in flavor. They're all virulently anti-academic. If you have the slightest common sense and a little bit of courage, you will see the game through very quickly. Anyway, there's a lot more to be said on that, but let me move on. By the way, tomorrow there will be no assembly. Okay? The second part of pursuing excellence is being aware of, mindful of, circumspect about other vehicles on the road. Right? Now, of course, that has got two different ways. One is levels. One is within the vehicle itself. There is a definite relationship in which parts have to function. If the engine is not coupled with the chassis properly, you may have the most excellent engine, but the vehicle will not move forward. If there is no gear, for example, of course, you may say, well, these are the days of automatic gears. But even so, there is a gear. And if the gear is not connected properly to the engine, then what happens? Well, leave alone all this. If one of the spark plugs is not in place, it is loose or something, that's it. That's it. Or for that matter, what we often think to be the most insignificant thing, an immaterial thing, a little bit of air. One of the tires is short on air. You can't go anywhere. You can't go anywhere. Now, what is tire? And what is the air within the tire? It defines the relationship between the vehicle and the earth, the ground. Multiple relationships. Pursuing excellence definitely means being sensitive to and respective of multiple responsibilities and relationships. For example, you have to be mindful of and grateful towards those who over the last 134 years have given their life to making a tradition as vibrant as this. And that is why on the 7th of December, year after year, we get together in one of the most solemn functions in college called the Founders Day, and remember by name every principal, every faculty member who has served the college in the last 134 years. It's the mark of a dynamic institution. This doesn't happen in other colleges. If you are moving on, paradoxically, you can't leave the past behind. You have a tradition. You have to respect that tradition. I ask you today, how many of you bother to find out what this tradition is really like? What is it compacted of? What is its unique, distinctive feature? What is its soul? Have you ever bothered? If not, how can you say that you are pursuing excellence? You are in a state of dynamic academic life. So there is something at the back of it all. You must have your rear view mirror clean and cleared. There's something called the rear view mirror, isn't it? If you want to drive, you also need to use the rear view mirror. In fact, now these days there are 3 of them. It's very important because as speed increases, the rear vision becomes all the more important. Advanced cars will come fitted with sensors and all that, so that you know what's happening behind. So that's one part. The other part is there is also tomorrow. Just as you have come into the fruits of the labors of great people in the past, you also have to hand down something to the next generation. In fact, you must pass it on to them a little better than you found it. That's how a dynamic tradition is sustained. A dynamic tradition is not a museum piece. In a museum piece, an object of value can be kept frozen, apparently intact. This is why I have been emphasizing from the very beginning, quoting from Martin Heidegger, that you cannot really preserve anything without enriching it. Mere preservation is called mummification, lead to death, or what is dead. If you want to preserve, you have to enrich. That's a dynamic understanding of preservation. So when we say that this tradition of pursuing excellence in St. Stephen's College must be preserved, what we actually mean is that all of us are in a state of responsibility to continually enrich this tradition, which is the only sensible way of preserving this tradition. The alternative to this is becoming parasites of a tradition, and that will ensure that the lifeblood of this tradition is sucked dry over a period of time, and unknowingly, without people realizing it, this tradition begins to wilt and wither away, and one day it will, alas, collapse. So it's extremely important to have the rear view as well as, and this is what is called vision. I gave a talk here, the public lecture. What was my title? A vision for education. Now you understand why? Time didn't allow me at that time to develop all these, because after all, the time available in a public lecture is very limited. Now you can understand my concerns better because of this other perspective I have added to it. Okay? So 2 things, let's recapitulate quickly. 1, your relationship with the institution. Secondly, your awareness of the tradition and your sense of responsibility to the future. The 3rd thing, very quickly for want of time, destination. Now destination, like everything else, has a bifocal reference, 2 foci. You have your personal destination, and we all have a shared institutional destination. We are taking this college somewhere. It was this that's been missing for a long time. This idea of a forward movement towards finding the authentic self of the institution in a changing context. Please understand one thing very clearly. The world in which we are living has always been changing, is now changing, will ever change. And therefore, in order to be true and faithful to a vision from which the college originated 34 years ago, there was a vision. Nothing comes into being without a vision. That vision has to be reappropriated, reinterpreted, reincarnated in fresh vigor and vitality by us. The mere repetition of what people did a century ago will not do. There is an awesome responsibility cast upon each one of us to understand that spark and to give it a contextually proactive expression. That's what is called pursuing excellence. Remaining stuck in the past, no matter how glorious it is not pursuing excellence. It's an abdication of responsibility. I say this to you, my friends, because I believe that you are capable of it. I said this to you on the very first day. You are the best batch I have admitted. I have no doubt at all. You are capable of it. And for want of proper understanding, this great opportunity should not be missed. I want you to continually think about these things because it's participation in this wonderful process that lends something of its greatness to you. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru one day said, and I'll close on that, he said, we are all small men and women. But because the cause that we serve is great, something of its greatness will spill over and fall on us, making us too great. Can you remember this? Can anyone repeat it? All right, I'll say once again. We're all small men and women, but because the cause we serve is great, something of its greatness will spill over and fall onto us, making us too great. All right? That is why we should be Stephanians. That is what it means to be Stephanians. Have you understood? If you have understood, let's all rise and